And chat, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to Root Double Before Crime After Days, where we had just been introduced to actual gameplay for the first time in a long time. Once he and Natsuhiko had formed their pact to team up, Watase first retrieved his gun from Natsuhiko. Tips to read from Chapter 2. BC Insulator. Okay. I will read that. Okay. BC Insulator, Crime Victim Support Laws, Deep Underground, IGF-2R Gene, Meltdown Part 2, MSV, Procyon, Q-Style Martial Arts, Wataru Kasasaki. Alright. IGF-2R Gene. A gene mapped on chromosome 6 that mediates induction and inhibition of the proliferation of certain cells. IGF-2R stands for Insulin-like Growth Factor 2 Receptor. A research team in London once published findings that the gene may affect IQ, but their research was later disproved. Geneticists say the research fell victim to a logical fallacy known as the chopsticks gene. This fallacy is named after the anecdote of a researcher who claims to have discovered a gene that allows for skillful usage of chopsticks. But in reality, the researcher may have merely found a gene common in Asian people. In other words, the roles of genes are too complex and intertwined to easily determine which genes play which roles. Once IGF-2R gene mutations were identified and confirmed to cause increased BC receptor development in accordance with Antoine Courbet's ESP synchronization hypothesis, the IGF-2R gene gained even more prominence. There is still no method of directly measuring the extent of BC receptor development, but the extent of IGF-2R gene mutation has been codified so that BC aptitude can be calculated on a 7-step SABCDEF scale. Good old Japanese tier list scales. Furthermore, it has been established through animal experimentation that mutation of the IGF-2R gene causes an increase in cancer susceptibility, and thus research is currently being conducted to determine if it is a tumor suppressor gene. Okay. Wataru Kasasagi. Wataru's elder... You mean Watase's elder twin sister? Deceased, age 16 at time of death. A girl who valued life and lived her own life actively and positively. Thus, she deemed saving lives to be the highest form of righteousness and aspired to be a rescue worker. However, her young life came to an abrupt end after she saved Watase during the Great Rokume City arson. Her proactive mindset and way of life had a huge impact on Watase and was the biggest driving force in making him abandon his inactive lifestyle to become a rescue worker. Q-Style Martial Arts. A close combat style taught only to Q members. Based on Japanese Kempo and mixed with wrestling, Kosen Judo, and Karate, it is a martial art focusing on actual combat, similar to the National Police Agency's Taiho Jutsu and the Japanese Self-Defense Force's Kakuto Jutsu. Since Q doesn't mind resorting to terrorism, it can also be said to be a martial arts style specialized for counter terrorists. After Watase joined Q, he studied and trained in this style of martial arts with a former JSDF member he connected with. 1 second, guys. Okay. Okay. Crime Victim Support Laws. Sets of regulations for local self-governing bodies for the multifaceted support of crime victims, including monetary compensation and livelihood support. The first such law enacted is said to be the 1972 Warabi Disaster Compensation and Condolence Fund Law in Saitama. Such laws in Rokume City allowed for many bereaved families to receive aid after the violence of anti-BC League members triggered the Great Rokume City Arson. These laws also allowed for the orphaned Watase to graduate high school and pursue a career as a rescue worker, with his large sum of compensation money going to living expenses and tuition. Sets of regulations for local self-governing bodies. The Great Rokume City Arson was caused by the enification of Subject A, but as it was publicly announced as arson caused by members of the Anti-BC League, these laws were applied. At the time, the media reported that the city was abundantly compensating bereaved families, but on the other hand, this could also be seen as Labo had the city silence the bereaved families with financial assistance. Now that the dark side of Labo and the Rokume City government has come to light, so too will this truth in the near future. BC Insulator. A material developed and implemented by Miyoko Tankawa. It contains W particles using artificial BC receptors as a medium. Those artificial receptors interact with atmospheric M particles, causing the M particles to decay into W particles, thereby preventing the transmission of BC. This mechanism is strictly different from thermal/electrical insulators, but for the sake of convenience, they are still called BC insulators due to the similarity of function. Okay, so, hang on. If telepathy transmits along particles in the air, and the BC insulator materials block the particles from being able to transmit telepathy through them at all, how does Natsuhiko overpower them and be able to transmit throughout the facility? The special classroom in Rokume Academy, called the BC Room, uses these insulators, thus allowing for the free performance and practice of BC. The BC insulated walls are essentially like soundproof walls, but for mental voices. Labo's outer walls, inner walls, and security gates are also made with BC insulator inserts. This use case isn't for the simple practicing of BC, but for the isolation of communicators. Some of the stuff that they lay out for how the mechanics work doesn't make sense for how the mechanics are actually used. Procyon, a BC energy measuring instrument developed by Labo. The artificial BC receptors installed in the device measure the atmospheric W and M particle levels, allowing the device to display a quantified BC energy reading. The value is measured in units of MSV, milliscalar values, and the maximum measurable value is 15,000 MSV per hour. As its appearance deliberately mimics a radiation measurement device, the members of Sirius accept it as such without question. Alright, what's left? Deep Underground, Meltdown Part 2, and MSV. MSV, milliscalar value. A unit used by Labo deliberately cause the uninformed to confuse it with the more known MSV, the millisievert. The MSV used by Labo stands for milliscalar value, not a unit of measure for the effects of radiation on the human body, but rather one for the amount of BC particle energy. The name for the unit was made with the intention of abbreviating it as SV, so the name itself appears to hold no particular meaning. An end disaster at a nuclear power plant contaminates the land and food, leaving little positive prospect for the future. Rokume City and Labo were doing something so dark that they would rather cover it up as an end disaster than let the truth be known, which was why Q resorted to terrorism to expose that truth. Meltdown. I haven't read Meltdown Part 1. Do you want me to skip that and go to Part 2? I'm reading Meltdown Part 1. Also known as a nuclear reactor core meltdown. refers to when nuclear fuel melts into the base of its pressure vessel container due to errors like cooling system failure. Unless handled promptly, the radioactive material is at risk of spreading outside, excuse me, causing an extremely serious nuclear disaster. A worse situation is melt-through, when the nuclear fuel penetrates beyond the pressure vessel container and through subsequent barriers. Even worse is a melt-out, where the nuclear fuel breaks through the entire reactor and leaks into the ground. Furthermore, meltdowns are not limited to just the nuclear reactor core. Pools of spent fuel also hide the risk of a meltdown if not properly cooled. And meltdown part 2. Proprietary Labo jargon, referring to a state of extremely highly concentrated WX particle emission within Labo. Excuse me. The term also covers up such an event as a nuclear event. WX particles themselves are capable of causing serious brain and genetic damage, but an even more dangerous situation arises if a meltdown occurs at the same time as a case N. The meltdown negates AD's protective effect against subject N's NBC and sensus sympathy. In the same way that the melt effect extends a communicator's sensus sympathy range, the fall down of WX particles generated by the amplifier also extends the range of BC, hence the name meltdown. Did I read Deep Underground? Hang on. Ah, there we go, I missed it. A concept of underground space usage based on the 2001 Law on Special Measures for the Public Use of Deep Underground. Deep underground is legally defined in Japan as deeper than 40 meters, at depths usually unused for building basements, or otherwise 10 meters below a building's deepest layer of foundation. In the mid-1950s, use of underground space became congested, starting with the construction of underground trains in large cities. The Toei Oedo line, underneath Tokyo, for example, runs at an extremely deep depth of 49 meters at the deepest. The technical limit is said to be 100 meters, but to avoid any potentially chaotic environmental damage, the aforementioned Special Measures Law was enacted. Underground space dampens noise and vibrations, making it relatively safe, but it also gives rise to several technical issues such as ventilation and emergency procedures. In Rokame City, Labo's Area Zero utilizes this deep underground space. Just as its name suggests, Area Zero is a floor that isn't supposed to exist, and thus only a select handful of senior fellows in Labo even know about its existence. The purpose of Area Zero is the isolated confinement of Rank S aptitude communicators as test subjects. In addition to the artificial BC insulators used in the walls and ceilings, the surrounding soil acts as a natural insulator as well. I've still got so many to go. Watase first retrieved his gun from Natsuhiko. He figured he'd need a weapon for self-defense, since he didn't know what dangers were lurking out there. Natsuhiko had been a bit reluctant, but he ultimately complied. Watase then addressed the two kids before he left them in the shelter. Just to reiterate, you guys mustn't leave here at all. We don't know for sure who's been infected with malice, so we don't know what thoughts are driving them either. Consider everyone except me to be an enemy. Excuse me. Yeah, I know. The shelter door only opens if you punch in the password from the inside, and we're not going to be dumb enough to do that unless you call for us. Natsuhiko was no longer speaking formally with Watase. Well, I guess this is just how he normally talks to people. Besides, it would have been weird for him to treat Watase with respect when he's the terrorist who attacked Yori and shot him and Mashiro. It felt odd to Watase having kids their age treat him like an equal, but this way probably fit Watase and Natsuhiko's relationship better anyway. Okay, I'll be counting on you, Watase. Make sure you keep your promise with Yuri. Of course. Okay then, I'm off now. Take care of Yuri. Watase was about to run past the steel door when he heard a voice call out to him from behind. Captain Kasasagi. Please be careful, okay? Yeah. Watase gave a wry smile and left the shelter. He thought back to the conversation he'd had with Natsuhiko earlier as he walked with extreme caution. Keep your promise, huh? It went without saying that Watase intended to do so. He never planned on getting others involved with this terrorist plot to begin with. Since he was the one who inadvertently dragged everyone into this mess, he had a responsibility to get them out of the facility safely. But he had qualms about his mission to take Yuri away with him once they had escaped. It was true that he would have caused this whole incident for absolutely nothing if he didn't bring at least one test subject back. Then the Rokame City government's wrongdoings would never come to light, and their cover-ups would just continue unabated. But was Yuri really okay with going with him? And what about Natsuhiko? Naturally, there was no chance in hell he wanted that. Completing the mission might necessitate another confrontation with him. But that was all in the future. For now, all he had to think about was living up to his word with Natsuhiko and keeping his promise with Yuri. Alright, so there's 3, possibly 4 infected people. Jun, Kazame, and Ukita. Who is he going to see first? It feels like Enna's going to be part of the climax. It feels like Enna's going to be part of the climax. So I don't think he's going to run into her right away. My guess is that either Ukita or Kazumi is going to be the third. So I think he's running into Jun and saving Jun first. Is it going to be Ukita or Kazumi as the final one? Ukita feels more like a final boss, but it might be more thematic for Watase's final confrontation among the malice-infected people to be his ex-girlfriend. But Ukita's got a gun. I'm not sure which. For now, all he had to think about was living up to his word with Natsuhiko and keeping his promise with Yuri. So to do that, first thing I've got to do is collect all the guns still lying around in the facility. Much like him, Dojima and Hiyama had also brought guns into the facility. If no one had picked them up yet, that meant they were still lying around somewhere. Yeah, I'm thinking Enna's going to be the final confrontation as well. If no one had picked them up yet, that meant they were still lying around somewhere. Well, that's the question. Did Enna bring the gun she had, or was it one of the, was it Dojima or Hiyama's? Watase headed to Area 3 with that thought in mind. B1 Area 3, Inner Ring. He went back into the room full of corpses. He hadn't yet examined the place in detail. The room was littered with the bodies of Dojima and the 2 unknown researchers, unmoved from where he had seen them last. All the blood staining the place had completely dried up and turned black. A dull yet fierce pain stung at Watase's heart when he saw the wretched form of his friend. Dojima. Watase started to break out into choked sobs. When Watase had amnesia, he hadn't felt the sorrow of having lost his best friend of 10 years, but now it burst through like a waterfall. They'd been fighting side by side ever since they joined the fire department. They both passed the rescue worker exam in the same year. It wasn't long before their junior, Hiyama, joined in, and with their similar pasts, the three of them became brothers in arms who understood each other well. And now they were both dead. Dojima's body lay before him, with Hiyama's only an area away. But no matter how painful their loss was, now was not the time for grief. Dojima, Hiyama, I'll carry on your dying wishes. I will make sure that they're fulfilled. Watase muttered that and looked up. He then endured his sorrow and began diligently searching the room. It wasn't long before he found 2 pistols lying around, one in the corner of the room, the other under the desk. They were both NZ-75s, just like Watase's. There was no doubt that they were Dojima's and Hiyama's. So was Hiyama with Dojima when this all happened? But they're both out of bullets, huh? Dojima and Hiyama, infected with malice, had likely used up all their bullets on the researchers. And yet, in spite of that, Subject N had gotten away. I guess the malice contagion causes you to lose your composure, too. But you couldn't help it, could you, Dojima? We're rescue workers. We never learned how to kill people. Watase looked at the corner of the room with those bitter thoughts in mind. The broken jackhammer was sitting there. It was essential to their plan to escape through the pipe. But even if he could repair it, it would take about 3 hours for it to destroy the pump in the intake pipe. They wouldn't make it in time before the bomb went off. If worst comes to worst, do we need to find another escape route aside from the pipe? But where could they even find one? Watase exited the corpse-littered room as he left that thought in a corner of his mind. Once he was out in the hallway, he threw the 2 empty pistols to the floor. Hopefully they're bait. He then stomped on them with all his might with his safety boots, destroying both the guns and the magazines. But they were empty. Wouldn't you want one of your opponents to pick one up and be baited by it into trying to shoot you with it? That way, he didn't have to worry about someone picking one up later and misusing it. This means that the only guns left are my own and the one the old man has. It was a silver lining that not many people there had gotten their hands on guns. Now that he neutralized the threat those guns posed, Watase decided it was finally time to start searching for the people infected with malice. Alright, the first one I should catch is Old Man Ukita. Really? Was I that wrong? Excuse me. This place is huge, though, so to find him... He rounds the corner. Watase thought, then soon found an answer. The surveillance room. There were still several live monitors there. If he used those, he could gain a slightly better idea of what was going on in the facility at the moment. He headed off for the surveillance room with that thought. He slowly went down the staircase, being particularly careful to remain hidden and silent. His greatest fear was Ukita suddenly shooting him from a distance. But it'd actually be advantageous for Watase if he was able to physically spot Ukita first. It'll probably take him time to reload bullets, too. I should just run up to him and throw him to the floor. Watase had trained in martial arts ever since he joined Q. But so did Ukita. Excuse me. Now that his memories were back, he fully remembered how to use all those skills. Never thought I'd have to use them on the old man, though. He finished descending the staircase when he thought that. And just as soon as he left the stairwell, Watase heard a familiar voice. Sagi is with you too? Oh, okay. I was super wrong. No, he's a traitor. He heard voices, apparently coming from a room right next to the staircase, the surveillance room. Those voices, isn't that the old man and Teach? Listen in! Shit, Teach is in danger. Watase frantically dashed for the door to the surveillance room and opened it up. Stop it, old man. Don't hurt Teach. Aho! Watase gasped before he completed his sentence. He had been rendered speechless by the most unexpected scene unfolding before him. Enna and Ukita turned around in surprise. Enna might be Q. It wasn't Ukita who was attacking Enna. It was Enna who was pointing a gun at Ukita. What the hell? What's going on? Captain Kasasagi, you... Enna glared at Watase with hostility. She's gonna shoot? Watase drew his body back in surprise, only for Enna to run out of the room after a moment's hesitation. What the hell was that all about? Watase stood there in shock. Just then, Ukita started talking to him in a low voice. That woman wasn't a mere teacher at all. What? I tried to take her magazine from her, but then she ended up stealing the gun from me. Then she threatened me. She said, "Tell me everything you know right now, or I'll shoot to kill." You're having a pretty peaceful conversation with Watase for someone infected with malice. Her intent to kill was the real thing. Next thing I knew, I was confessing everything to her. All about the terrorist plot and how you betrayed us halfway through. The plan's a failure. It's all over thanks to you. Ukita lunged at Watase as he shouted that. What? You've got a gun too, right? Give it to me right now. That woman is probably an assassin sent by Labo. If we don't hunt her down and kill her now, she'll kill us. Ukita tried to steal Watase's gun with bloodshot eyes. It was clear he was completely possessed by madness. Damn it, is this also the Malice's influence? Watase dodged... What do you mean also? This is the same as before. Watase dodged around Ukita with little effort and circled behind him. He then wrapped his arm around the old man's neck and squeezed. It was a sleeper hold, a technique to render someone powerless without actually harming them. Ukita's arms soon dangled limply. Phew, this should be fine, right, Natsuhiko? Well, that was easy. Watase sighed heavily and picked up Ukita. He then ran back for the shelter. Meanwhile, Natsuhiko, 9 years worth of conversation, was in the shelter with Yuri. The two of them were gazing at Mashiro's face. Mashiro was groaning in pain. Mashiro looks like she's in pain, huh? Yeah. Natsuhiko was frustrated at being powerless to help her. There were so many things he wanted to talk about when she woke up. He wanted to tell her that Yuri was alive. Hey, Mashiro, this must have been how you felt 9 years ago, huh? This is what it must have felt like to watch me stupefied, unable to wake up. That incident had shattered their daily lives. Natsuhiko became stupefied once he was told of Yuri's death, and when he woke up, he started to see a phantom. Yes, we've established this, Natsuhiko. That we established this over the last, 30 hours of the game. The three kids who had once been together had become distanced in many ways. But after such a long time, we're finally all together again. And yet, Mashiro had watched over Natsuhiko until his time of awakening came, and now Mashiro was the one lying down, wakeless. What if, before Mashiro woke up, Watase handed Yuri over to Q and she was taken away somewhere? Those two best friends might never meet again. Yuri, are you sure you're okay with it? You mean the deal with Captain Kasasagi? She says with a smile on her face. Yeah, at this rate, that might mean you'll have to part with Mashiro too, you know. Just how sad would it make her to hear about everything after the fact? Yuri suddenly sighed in reply. You know, Hikarin, I'm sure it might make Masharon sad, but sadness is only temporary, you know? Huh? Well, I'm sure she'll have mixed feelings about knowing that I'm alive. Why's that? Why's that? You can't tell me you haven't noticed it, can you? Masharon really loves you, you know? She loves you so much, she risked her life to come with you all the way to Labo. But if I were to suddenly appear and steal you away after all of that, then even Masharon would get mad. Hey, hold on, Yuri. Of course, the deal with Captain Kasasagi was to ensure everyone got saved, but it's also a good opportunity for me to back off, too. Don't be self-sacrificing like that! That's a bad reason! Excuse me. With me out of the way, you and Masharon can be together. Yeah, so it really is the best course of... What are you saying, idiot? Natsuhiko couldn't bear to listen anymore, so he interrupted her. Idiot? Oh, finally she's on the back foot. Yuri's eyes widened. It was understandable. That was the very first time Natsuhiko had ever badmouthed her. But nonetheless, Natsuhiko hardened his heart and continued. Yuri, don't you know? Don't you know just how much Mashiro loved you? Do you know how much it pained her heart to learn that you had died? But that was ages ago. Who cares about a dead friend who's been gone for 9 whole years? Besides, Masharon's a way more amazing girl than me. There's no way a girl like her would care about someone like me forever. Lying to yourself, Yuri. After all, Masharon's so cute and cheerful and popular with all the boys. None of that matters to her, and you know it, don't you? Yuri pouted her lips. It was a conversation 9 years in the making. Natsuhiko and Yuri were speaking not through BC, but with their own voices. Not through lies and falsehoods, but from the heart. Mashiro would always communicate with you through me. You're not just some 9-year-old dead friend to her at all. She still cares about you. There's no way in hell that Mashiro would be upset to learn you're alive. So please, stop this nonsense about backing off for Mashiro's sake. I'm sure that's actually the one thing she'd hate the most. But... Yuri looked more and more confused. Natsuhiko sighed. Say, Yuri, can you please drop the mindset that it's okay if I suffer as long as nobody else has to? Huh? I'm not just talking about the thing with Mashiro. You're like that with Watase's deal, too. You were confined here for 9 years, and at the end of all of that, you fall into Q's hands. You're not okay with that, are you? I don't want you to go through that again. I want to set you free. Once Natsuhiko had said all that, Yuri smiled ever so slightly. If only. If only I could go outside, bask in the light of the sun, and walk freely in the park. I'm sure it'd be fun. If only I could go on a trip somewhere with you and Masharon and Salu and the professor too. About the professor! Then... Yuri interrupted Natsuhiko when he tried to speak. But I can't. Even if we disregard Masharon's feelings, I really still can't be with you guys. Why not? Because I'm a test subject. Labo has their eye on me. You don't know just how frightening Labo can be. They're an institution that's confined people for years on end, you know? They could even be above the police for all we know. Even if you stood against Labo as an individual, you'd have no chance to succeed, Hikarin. Only organizations can oppose organizations. So you see, that's why, if I want to leave here, then I have no choice but to let Q take custody of me. Natsuhiko was speechless in light of Yuri's sad words. Now he understood why she had been so obstinate. She didn't want to get Natsuhiko or Mashiro involved. But still, In the end, that still means Yuri has to endure suffering all by herself, doesn't it? Are you going to volunteer to go with her? Once that thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind, he suddenly heard a sound coming from outside the shelter door. Who's there? It's me. Please, open up. It was Watase. Relieved, Natsuhiko input the password on the keypad beside the door. And soon enough, the iron door opened and Watase appeared. I wonder if Enna's just like a government agent come to investigate Labo. Or what if like every other cool theory I've had about this game, it's something more mundane and she really is just a teacher who got a gun and is interrogating Ukita to try to figure out what the hell is going on. No tulpas, no psychic mind virus, no self-propagating psychic mind virus. Enna's not Dr. Tenkawa. Ukita is just a regular researcher. I've been shut down at every turn in this game. Look who I brought. Watase was carrying a limp Ukita under his arm. Mr. Ukita. Relax, he's just unconscious. Watase gently laid Ukita down on the floor. And sure enough, Ukita had not a single visible wound. Natsuhiko was unsure how exactly Watase had apprehended him, but it couldn't have been easy to apprehend someone who had a gun without hurting them, could it? Well, now you see exactly what my stance is, don't you? Watase. Watase had kept his promise with Yuri. Evacuate everyone safely. It seemed Watase was striving to make sure nobody got hurt during the process either. Damn, I'm not sure if this guy's got integrity or what. While Natsuhiko found himself at a loss for words, Yuri spoke for him. Captain Kasasagi, thank you for keeping your promise. Watase looked uncomfortable and just turned up his nose. Anyway, if you're gonna do it, then just do it already. That malice erasure thing. Excuse me. There's no doubt that the monster's screwing around inside the old man's head. He'll probably go berserk again the moment he wakes up, and that's definitely gonna be a pain. Yeah. Natsuhiko had seen a deranged Ukita up close too. He was no doubt infected with malice. But I won't do something as crude as a full memory erasure anymore. That was the decision Natsuhiko had made. So he would erase only the malice within Ukita, in the same way he had done with Watase. Okay, Yuri. This time, let's start off by accessing and repairing just the floral-scented memories from the get-go. And then we'll erase subject and spirit. Huh? Are you sure? That sounds a little different from the process we used for Captain Kasasagi, though. I want to minimize reading other people's memories to only what's absolutely necessary. I'm sure even Mr. Ukita wouldn't like it if we just peeked into his mind without permission, you know? That was something Natsuhiko had been prohibiting himself from doing. But in response to that answer, Watase said, I see. So you're prohibiting yourself from abusing your abilities, huh? I admire that intention of yours, kid, but I think it's dangerous. Dangerous? Why? Just erasing his malice doesn't necessarily make him safe, does it? What? Mr. Ukita's one of your comrades, isn't he? You don't believe in him? That's not what I'm talking about. It's just, there's honestly a lot about the old man as a person that I don't understand. I know I'm not one to talk, but there's just way too much about the old man's behavior that's suspicious, like how he tied up Yuri. No, that fits pretty well with his stated motivation, so don't you think it's worth checking out what's been driving him, just to make sure? Hey, if the man who's super against mind reading is saying, no, read his mind, please, I think it's a good idea to go for it. It was a little unexpected for Watase to say such a thing, despite not being a communicator. But Yuri spoke in support of that opinion as well. Hikari, I can understand why you'd have qualms about doing it, but don't you think it'd be best if we did a proper check of Mr. Ukita's past? Huh? I get the feeling that repairing the falsified memories will require as deep an understanding of Mr. Ukita as possible. Or else we'll have no way of knowing for sure if the memories have been properly repaired or not. That's true. Oh, it's going to be an extended flashback with him, isn't it? Not just the repair minigame. Okay. That's true. Watase and Yuri made sound arguments. Though it was important to know the dangers of his ability, it might have been more dangerous to fixate on such moral issues. Perhaps he should follow Watase's and Yuri's suggestion. Okay, I'm guessing Watase and Yuri high? Oh. Interesting. I guess Ukita high, Natsuhiko low? Want to make a special save for this one. Just to make sure. Okay. Let's see. I have this special save. God, literally from 10 months ago. At the start of before Chapter 1. Do I need this for anything? Anymore? Got that one done, you can save over it. Okay. Okay, so I'm guessing Ukita... Well, would you like me to see the proper path or the bad path first? I guess we'll go proper path, so I'm guessing Ukita up, Natsuhiko down. Proper path sounds good. So Ukita high, Natsuhiko low, right? Yes, okay. Excuse me. Perhaps you should follow Watase's and Yuri's suggestion. Everyone's lives hang on my shoulders. I can't be too careful with malice erasure here, can I? But just how detailed of a check should he run? Should he look through Ukita's memories in detail, or only the bare minimum? I want to keep it to the bare minimum. He considered that course of action for a moment, but then Natsuhiko second-guessed himself. No, I really do want to know the details. Why would a diligent man like Mr. Ukita dabble in terrorism? Natsuhiko decided to have a detailed look at Ukita's memories. Okay, let's dive into Mr. Ukita's memory then. As Natsuhiko held his breath in anxiety, Yuri gently grasped his hand. Hikari, I'm here for you. Natsuhiko nodded at her words, walked up to Ukita, whose eyes shot open and activated senses sympathy. It was 4.5 years ago. After graduating from college and completing over 10 years of hard work in the field of physics, his dream of being admitted into the 6th Laboratory of Atomic and Biological Organization was fulfilled. Before his admission, he was informed that Labo was no nuclear research facility, but instead a BC research facility. Labo was lying to the world, but that mattered little to Ukita. All that mattered to him was his own research. So wait, hang on. Labo takes outside applicants instead of searching people up? That doesn't seem like a good plan. It was said that by joining Labo, a vastly accomplished laboratory, one's career was more or less set in stone. Ukita looked to his own future with pride and high hopes. And when he first visited Labo, he met her. How do you do? I'm Keiji Ukita. I've just been assigned here. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Miyoko Tenkawa, the supervisor of this section. I look forward to making your acquaintance. The woman greeting him was none other than Dr. Miyoko Tenkawa, the world authority on elementary particle physics. She had been active in the world of physics before she'd even hit 20, and despite her young age, had soared her way up to become one of the highest-ranked researchers at the facility. Finally, I can finally work actively in the most cutting-edge elementary particle physics research under her leadership. Ukita was burning with passion that day. But after half a year of work at Labo, Ukita found himself faced with a number of problems. He spent his breaks in between work in the reference room, worrying to himself as he pretended to look for documents. Damn it, why is it that everyone I know is getting results except for me? Up until that point, he'd basically never been inferior to anyone else when it came to his field of study. But even the most outstanding of prodigies were easily overshadowed in a sea of geniuses. And Labo was filled with that very sea. Does all of my scientific training amount to nothing more than this? He gritted his teeth in frustration at the thought. Just then, he heard the sound of the door opening up behind him. He turned around and saw Dr. Tenkawa there. Oh, you're looking for some documents too, Mr. Ukita? Oh, no. But are you looking for some yourself? I can give you a hand if you'd like. Thank you, but I know where they are, so I'll be fine. She reached out for the top of a bookshelf as she said that. What's going on? She looks a tad unsteady on her feet. Is there going to be Ukita Tenkawa romance, or one-sided at least? Just as he thought that, he saw Dr. Tenkawa's knees give out. Look out! Ukita quickly caught the professor, a number of papers raining to the floor. Professor, are you all right? Oh, I'm sorry. I've been working several sleepless nights recently, so I was a bit dizzy. She let go of Ukita and stepped away from him, but she was still walking on unsteady feet. Seriously, how pathetic of me. I didn't expect to be reduced to this after just 3 nights without sleep. Are you serious? 3 nights? Wouldn't it be better for you to rest a little then? It's all right. I'm used to it. Dr. Tenkawa put the fallen papers back on the shelf and tried to leave the room. Before he even knew what he was doing, Ukita called out to her. Dr. Tenkawa. Huh? How do you think I can become an amazing scientist like you? Imagine reading the mind of someone with the hots for your mom. Yeah! The professor's eyes widened at that question. An amazing scientist. It sounds like something a child would say. No, Just so you know, Mr. Ukita, I am by no means an amazing scientist. I've merely found a major problem that I need to solve. A problem worth forgoing sleep to research. What do you mean by a major problem? Dr. Tenkawa quietly answered Ukita's question. There's still so much we don't know about BC, and it's dangerous to leave it that way. We've kept this hidden from the world, but the truth is that if a high-level communicator misuses BC, there's a chance their mind will break. Huh? Is that true? Yes. Actually, there was a communicator I once knew whose mind broke because they misused BC. That's why I'm working to solve the mysteries of BC, so that something like that doesn't happen again. To my adopted daughter. So, then that means you skip sleep and meals and immerse yourself in research so that all communicators may have peace to look forward to. You're devoting your life to clearing a path for the communicator's future? It's nothing as grand as that. But if there's a problem out there, then I want to solve it with the power of science. Isn't that the thought that drives all scientists? I can't tell anyone about my research right now, but I believe that someday the fruits of that research will benefit communicators and society as a whole. That's all. Ukita found his heart moved by Dr. Tenkawa's words. Now that he thought about it, he pursued his research wholeheartedly because he wanted to be acknowledged by the world. That's the kind of person he was. But Dr. Tenkawa was different. She'd likely achieved her current position out of a conviction to save communicators. Ukita quickly grew embarrassed of himself the moment he realized that difference. Thank you, Dr. Tenkawa. You've helped me open my eyes. I'm glad to hear that. Talking with you has made me feel a little less drowsy, too. That wasn't exactly what Ukita meant, but as the professor left the room, he felt that the mere sight of her was looking at pure light. Ukita changed from that day onwards. He threw himself into his research without sparing time for sleep. He died 2 weeks later. He made efforts in research related to improving the BC insulator. If we can popularize a high-quality insulator, then friction between communicators and normal people should decrease. It was with those thoughts that Ukita sought techniques to create low-priced insulators with high energy absorptivity, achieving results after results. And a year and a half later, Ukita encountered Dr. Tenkawa in the reference room, much like he had that one day. When she saw him, she broke out into a smile and spoke up to him. Mr. Ukita, you've been working quite hard since that day, haven't you? Huh? Congratulations. Human Affairs has decided to promote you to a junior fellow. Is that true? Yes. As of tomorrow, you will be working for the research team directly under my command. I look forward to working with you. Yes, the honor's all mine. Now he could finally work together with the scientist he so admired. Ukita's heart trembled with that thought. Excuse me. It had happened 2 years ago. Ukita had gotten special permission to enter Area N with Dr. Tenkawa that day. So this is the WX particle amplifier. Ukita was overwhelmed by the 6 towers standing in the giant hall. Well, what are your impressions of the genuine article? I've heard about it before, but it's incredible what Labo was able to create by mustering all of its efforts. Indeed, but there's still a long way to go before it's completely stable. That's why you'll mainly be in charge of operating the WX particle amplifier. Most of that is conducted in the system control room, though, so you likely won't get another chance to come back here. I see. Incidentally, what is that transparent tube in the middle of the room? So that's how he was able to trigger the amplifier meltdown. I'm sorry, but that information is only to be divulged to senior fellows. So it's top secret information, I take it? Yes, but leave your inquiries at that. The look in Dr. Tenkawa's eyes became slightly pointed when she said that. Looks a little more than slightly pointed. Curiosity killed the cat. It would be best for junior fellows to remember that phrase. I don't want to intimidate you, but it'd be safer for you not to take a government-managed facility lightly. I take it you'd rather avoid any unnecessary trouble, yes? Understood. I'll keep that in mind. Well, that matter aside, there's actually one more job I would like to entrust to you, Mr. Ukita. Are there some data you'd like me to examine? No, it's not related to your duties as a researcher. I'd like you to be my son's observer. What do you mean by observer? You see, my son Natsuhiko actually has an IGF-2R gene abnormality of type S. Type S? That's... Yes, an extremely rare occurrence. They say it occurs in only 1 out of every 30 million births. But Natsuhiko hasn't manifested his BC abilities once. However, Labo still cannot ignore his case. Thus, they've made him an observation target. His former observer lived in the house across from ours, but he retired the other day. And you live next door to us, so... Please, wait a moment. I live right next door to you? You live right next door to Natsuhiko. Oh, were you not aware of that? You never go home! Not at all. We haven't seen each other once in our neighborhood, so... True, perhaps we never did have any opportunities for that. I practically live here in Labo now, after all. Anyway, could you please be his observer? All you have to do is watch to see if his BC abilities ever manifest, and report at least a little bit about his day-to-day life. Dr. Tenkawa was always extraordinarily busy. There was no doubt that she had very few opportunities to see her son. Understood. I'll accept your request. Since Ukita was also quite busy, he wrote up his observation reports once a month. Natsuhiko had been given the rather pretentious designation of Special Observation Target NA2, the container of sodium. He has been pretty salty at various points. Special Observation Target NA2, 66 Periodic Report. Current Observer, Keiji Ukita. Date, May 3rd, 2028. Location, in front of NA2's residence. Status, I exchanged greetings with NA2 for the first time this morning upon leaving for work. He appears to be a rather polite boy. Report, no signs of BC ability manifestation. 68th Periodic Report. Ukita, July 6, 2028. Location, in front of NA2's residence. Status, NA2 and his friend M put a bamboo tree in front of the entryway. NA2's wish was for the three of us to always be friends. It appears that he has one more friend in that house, but I have not been able to make any visual confirmation of them. Furthermore, when NA2 inquired to me about how Dr. Tenkawa was doing, I told him she's working hard. He did not show a particularly positive reaction to that, but it looked more to me like disguised love. Report, no signs of BC ability manifestation. A thought suddenly crossed Ukita's mind as he wrote his report on Natsuhiko's day-to-day life. Come to think of it, Mashiro is always with Natsuhiko. Could that mean that Mashiro has feelings for Natsuhiko? Well, yes, but they could just be really good friends, man. A smile crossed Ukita's face as that guess filled his mind. However, his emotions soon changed when reality hit him. He'd already heard from Dr. Tenkawa that Mashiro Toba had an IGF-2R gene abnormality of type B. Those with IGF-2R genetic mutations were doomed with short lifespans. According to statistics, the life expectancy of communicators who were type B and higher was roughly 33 years. Ukita himself had just turned 33. The thought that Natsuhiko and Mashiro might not even make it to his age was heart-wrenching. I want to protect their futures. He probably would have never thought that way had he never met Dr. Tenkawa. And it was extremely likely that the fact she had a Type S son had only strengthened her desire to save communicators. But what does Dr. Tenkawa plan on doing if her son, the Special Observation Target, manifests his BC abilities? No, now that I think about it, I've never been told why Special Observation Targets exist to begin with. Natsuhiko has been designated as NA2, which means there was likely an NA, thank you, that came before him. Well, I guess they're pronouncing it Na2? Blessed Orb Pokemon. Ukita accessed the network using his observer authority and typed Target NA in the search engine on that hunch. But he found nothing relevant. All records had probably been deleted for some reason. He then just tried searching Special Observation Target. What's this? How to deal with Special Observation Targets? Ukita opened the file under that name. Proposal for how to deal with Special Observation Targets. August 1st, 2020. Proposals for how to deal with Special Observation Targets are as follows. The observers and the administrators of Area 0 wish to deliberate this matter carefully. First of all, they wish to determine new consideration criteria regarding confinement procedures for Special Observation Targets. Up until now, the single criterion has been that special observation targets will be considered for confinement after reaching ability level 4. However, we believe this single criterion to be lacking in foresight. There have been many cases where IGF2R gene abnormality level S communicators have displayed abilities that defy the norm. Thus, Labo believes that we should adopt unique criteria and supplement them to the existing criterion. Special observation targets will be considered for confinement in the event that they display unusual BC abilities, regardless of their ability level. This includes cases where they display extraordinarily long-range telepathy and cases where their ability level rises considerably in a short period of time. Should a special observation target ever meet any of the above criteria, they will be immediately considered for confinement. Depending on the situation, swift and pertinent preparations shall be made, and the special observation target shall be transferred to Labo at the best opportunity. Afterwards, they will be imprisoned in Area 0 as a test subject. Furthermore, the test subject born in Labo shall be confined there permanently unless a special case occurs. Changes in circumstances, revision to laws, etc. Okay, so is Subject N a clone of Yuri? Is still the pressing question about her. Because she's not old enough to be the daughter of Subject A. She could be a clone of Subject A, but I think she's most likely a clone of Yuri. I'm fully prepared for it to be something less cool than that, but also, should a currently confined test subject be released for any suitable reason, they shall be reclassified as a special observation target. We would also like to establish different criteria for dealing with the aforementioned special observation targets. Area 0 Administrator Shuya Araguchi. They will be imprisoned in Area 0 as a test subject. What does this mean? What in the world is Area 0? This is a bit sloppy to leave this where junior fellows can access it. As soon as he thought that, he suddenly remembered what he'd seen in Area N. I'm sorry, but that information is only to be divulged to senior fellows. What if that was actually an elevator leading underground? It wouldn't be all that odd for there to be a place under Area N that normal researchers didn't know about. Excuse me. So what does that mean? Does this document suggest that special observation targets whose abilities manifest are imprisoned under Area N? Special observation target Na-2, Natsuhiko, still hadn't manifested his BC abilities. That was probably why he'd been able to live a normal life ever since surveillance on him began in 2021. But... Excuse me. Will Natsuhiko be confined if his abilities manifest? What's more, this proposal mentioned a currently confined test subject, meaning that they have at least one test subject confined in Area 0 at this very moment. Ukita tried typing Area 0 into the search engine with shaky fingers. But when he did, the only thing his monitor displayed was that he'd been caught. Confidentiality level 5. It appeared Ukita could not access the information with his ID and password. But on the other hand, if there were people out there with level 5 clearance and up, then that meant Dr. Tenkawa and the other senior fellows could access it. So that means only a select few researchers know about the existence of any test subjects. But what are the senior fellows hiding from us junior fellows? Apparently not much, because they were sloppy enough to leave this information where a junior fellow could find it. Test subjects for what? In the first place, test subject was a word that was used to talk about mice and such, used for experiments. But if that word was being used to talk about a human, then that meant... It can't be. Is Labo performing human experimentation? No, I won't believe it. There's no way that Labo, that Dr. Tenkawa, would ever partake in such barbarity. But the seed of doubt in Ukita kept on growing day by day. And before he knew it, one day he started searching for information on any test subjects. He found the information he was looking for in a document located in a room where all the undigitized paper media was stored. This is... Ukita was shocked at what was written there. Labo Fire Incident, July 10th, 2021. All relevant parties are most likely already aware of the fire that occurred in this facility 3 days ago, July 7th, 2021. Although the worst possible outcome was averted at the last moment, there were inadequacies found in multiple security systems. This document contains a compilation of the problems hinted at by this incident. The cause of the fire lies in the deranged actions of Senior Fellow S. S had been appointed as an administrator of Area 0 on April 12th. As a result, he had quite a great number of opportunities to come into contact with the research results in Area 0. I will ban you. View bot ad. Goodbye. And about 3 months later, S committed his crime. He took the power generator gasoline stored in Area 0 and scattered it at 6 points throughout Labo. He used time lighters to set them all on fire and intentionally caused the WX particle amplifier to go haywire at the same time. He also unlocked the gates to Area N and Area 0. He is believed to have committed the arson in order to escape with certain research results during the fire. Though this is nothing more than a guess, seeing as how S is now dead, the possibility of this is quite high. Furthermore, these research results shall be designated as N amongst all senior fellows to conceal the relevant details. God, you guys suck at InfoSec! If he hadn't any context about the document, Ukita probably wouldn't have paid all that much attention about it. But when he put together all the information he'd gathered so far, a doubt rose to his mind. It says here that the Senior Fellow S was in charge of Area 0. What if he did all that to try to get the test subject out of Labo? Could the research results designated as N be a secret code name for the test subject? It was nothing more than a guess, but Ukita felt he was on the right track. As Senior Fellow had gone deranged and set fire to Labo, Ukita couldn't come up with many reasons for why he'd do that. Okay, so hang on. So, Yuri had not yet been imprisoned in Area 0. She was not yet in the custody of Labo when the fire happened. And I don't think Subject N had been born yet. She only looks like she's like 9 years old. Excuse me. So, could she be older than that? Maybe she is a clone of Subject A and they'd been experimenting on her as a baby and S had seen that and went, nope, fuck that. Needing a lot of water today. A Senior Fellow had gone deranged and set fire to Labo. Ukita couldn't come up with many reasons for why he'd do that. S probably took advantage of the fire to try to get the test subject out of the facility. But Labo found out about what he did. So he failed and was killed. He remembered what Dr. Tenkala had once told him. Curiosity killed the cat. It would be best for junior fellows to remember that phrase. The words once spoken by the woman he respected so much now sounded horribly cruel. I knew it. Labo really is secretly conducting human experimentation. Ukita's body started trembling the moment that suspicion turned into conviction. He alone was being tormented by the fear of having looked into the abyss. 3 days later, Ukita decided to question Dr. Tenkala as a scientist. Uh-oh. Is something the matter, Mr. Ukita? Why did you call me out here? My sincerest apologies. There's something that I simply must ask you about. I am certain every scientist has thought of this at least once. But do you believe that robbing the happiness of one to develop the technology to save 1,000,000 is forgivable? The professor answered Ukita's question honestly, as if she'd realized how serious he was. Ethically speaking, no. However, it's something we must do, even if it's not forgivable. Huh? What we're dealing with is a power that is very high risk in human hands. If humanity can choose whether or not to use BC, then I don't think they should use it. But regardless of our wishes, more and more new communicators are being born. So there's no chance that we can stop researching it. We can't leave a power that mind-bogglingly strong unchecked. Just like you say, maybe it is necessary to continue with BC research. But shouldn't we think more carefully about the methods involved in that? We have our ethics as scientists, and our ethics as humans. I believe it is when we forget those things that technology goes down the wrong path. What are your thoughts on that? Huh? Hold on, what sort of question is this? Please just answer the question. I need to hear it. Perhaps you're right. However, at the end of the day, all we can do is pursue the truth and solve the problems before us. Whether that's good or evil is not for us to decide. Yes, it is. It is history's job to vindicate or vilify us. That is the way science has always continued to progress. So likewise, I will do whatever it takes to achieve my goal as nothing more than one of those scientists. With those words, something precious in Ukita crumbled apart with a roar. In that case, please let me ask you one more question. What do you plan on doing with Natsuhiko if his BC abilities manifest? Mr. Ukita, don't tell me you... Ukita didn't answer her question. Finally, she sighed and spoke. Mr. Ukita, as of today, you are hereby relieved of your duty of observing Na-2. And as of tomorrow, you'll be transferred to another research team. Is that your answer, Dr. Tenkawa? But Dr. Tenkawa didn't answer and simply walked away from Ukita. Does she keep his secret? Ukita went outside Labo after that. The sky was filled with heavy clouds that threatened to start raining at any moment. He'd started laughing to himself without even noticing it. I worked myself to the bone all this time because I wanted to save communicators. I finally grew a desire to do something for others' sakes. Yet I never would have guessed that Labo, of all places, was using those very same communicators for their own experiments. What a sick joke. He couldn't stop the dry laughter coming from his throat. Suddenly, he noticed that there were tears running down his cheeks. Must I find a clear solution to this? As a scientist, must I write off this sacrifice as insignificant in the grand scheme of things? Indeed, if he had just committed himself to that mindset, he could have continued living his life as he had up until this point. He could have lived as a highly paid Labo scientist with no inconveniences in his life. Whatever happened to that test subject he'd never even seen before would have had no bearing on him. He should have had no issues with any of that. Yet, preposterous. There is no way in hell I can accept that. He couldn't bear to live in such complacency. Scientists and test subjects are both humans. No just cause in the world is worth sacrificing them. An emotion welled up from his heart when he shouted that. I have to put a stop to it. It was a rage that smashed his devotion to his job to pieces. There was also the pure disgust of participating in such wrongdoings. But by no means was that all. Oddly enough, it was what Dr. Tenkawa had shown him that gave him this conviction. Her good heart that lived for others. I'll do it. I'll saved that trapped test subject. Come on, translators. He was probably the only one in the city who knew of the test subject and wanted to free them. If he were the only one who could act, then inaction was a sin. Perhaps my motivation is but a fragile, powerless sense of justice. Perhaps I'll be erased, just like Senior Fellow S was. Regardless, Ukita turned around and glared at Labo's gargantuan shadow. Cold rain suddenly poured down and crashed upon him. But the flame that had been lit in the depths of his heart would never go out. Did I just get a tip called conflict? Is that going to define conflict? Okay, I gotta see this. Hang on. Conflict. A disagreement or contention? How do you expect people to not know what the word conflict means? That's bizarre. But the flame that had been lit in the depths of his heart would never go out. Excuse me. After that night, where Ukita learned the truth about Labo, he began his lonely battle. He worked all alone in his personal office. The only work he did was the mind-numbing process of examining data sent to him, a fitting job for someone who had been kicked upstairs. There was a surveillance camera in his office, so he would have been found out immediately if he ever showed the slightest sign of doing anything suspicious. But they couldn't read his mind. Ironically, Ukita was thinking over his next course of action as he did his job. What should I do? How can I stop the human experimentation? The Rokome City government must be in cahoots with Labo if they're keeping up such a large-scale cover-up. So that means going to the police is out of the question. And leaking word out to the media will be difficult as well. Labo performed a strict body search on anyone entering or leaving the facility, so it'd be extremely hard to smuggle out damning documents. And what's more, Ukita still didn't know anything more than the basic details about the test subject. One wrong step, and he'd most likely meet the same fate that Senior Fellow S had. And that means the only reliable groups are... When that thought hit him, Ukita began participating in various internet forums to find organizations who looked like they'd help his cause. He then posted a question to the users on those forums. Do you think you could forgive Rokome City if it turned out they were secretly using communicators for human experimentation? But their responses only served to betray Ukita's hopes each time. Their comments of, think you're getting a tad delusional there, and lol, conspiracy theorists, showed that not only did they not believe him at all, but they also didn't have any sense of impending danger. Damn it, what should I do? The test subject could be suffering even at this moment. So how... Just then, Ukita's PDA rang with a faint beep. He took it out and looked at the display to find it read, Caller Unknown. Though it made him feel vaguely anxious, he still picked up the phone, which is something a lot of people don't do in 2025. Hello? Speaker you, I presume. What? Who are you? No, first things first, how do you know who I am? Ukita had taken special precautions every time he participated in a forum discussion to keep his identity from being leaked. But someone's actually calling me. That means... Just then, the voice on the other end spoke gently, as if he'd anticipated Ukita would panic. Wait, hold on. I'd like to hear your story before you hear mine. My story? I am quite interested in the things you've been writing. I'd like to have a more in-depth discussion about them. However, our talk will get a tad complicated. Could we perhaps move this discussion somewhere else? Do you mean you want to meet me face to face? Something like that? So, come to the location I am about to give you. Alone. You're free to refuse, of course. For some odd reason, Ukita couldn't defy that voice. The address he was given was the old Rokome City Hospital that had burned down in the Great Rokome City Arson 14 years ago. If this is a trap by Labo, then I might be erased. He kept up his guard when he walked into the ruins, but there were no signs of anyone else there. "Hey, is someone there?" Ukita's shouts echoed ineffectually through the ruins. Ukita became convinced that it might have been a trap and was about to run for it when he spotted a shining object in a corner on the floor. Excuse me. What's that? He walked over to the object and picked it up. It was a PDA. The words "Call in Progress" were displayed on its screen. Ukita timidly pressed it to his ear and then heard the voice of the man who had called him earlier. "Good. Looks like you really did come. What's the meaning of this? Don't tell me that you don't plan on showing your own face after you called me out here. I truly am sorry, but I cannot meet with you face to face. You see, that would be one more piece of artwork and animations that the artist would have to design, and we can't have that. It would be impossible for me to enter Rokame City due to my social status. So I prepared this PDA and had a friend of mine deliver it to that location." "What? Why would you choose such a roundabout method to contact me? Wouldn't it have been better to just keep talking on the phone if you never intended to meet me face to face anyway? Could be tapped." "Oh my, you don't know? All the phones in Rokame City are tapped." "What?" Ukita gasped. Though he had indeed heard rumors to that effect, he simply dismissed them as a rather sick joke. Rokame City has created a voice analysis system that analyzes the vast amount of voice data exchanged over all phone calls in the city. Should anyone say anything of inconvenience over the phone, it will automatically be intercepted and reported to the security department. Something like this, for example. "Can you all forgive Rokame City?" And does that mean this conversation's being monitored too? No, this PDA is a direct call digital transceiver that doesn't go through any relay stations. The call is also encrypted, so we don't have to worry about unwanted ears listening in. Ukita felt his spine grow cold as they talked. He was of course shocked about the tapping, but he also felt spooked out at just how thoroughly prepared the caller had been. Anyway, relax. We can talk all we want with this PDA. Wait a moment. Before we get into that, let me ask you something. Excuse me. Who in the world are you? Me, huh? The man paused before he answered Ukita's question. If I said Q, would you know what I meant? Q? That terrorist group that hates communicators? No, we are not terrorists. I plan to tell you the whole story about that, but I'd like to propose something to you first. As I'm sure you've already realized, you are trying to take on an enemy that is too big for you fight alone. Did the quality of the translation just dip suddenly at this point in Brute D? It's like the 8th typo/skipped word that I've seen in the last 15 minutes. So what do you say about using us to achieve your goal? Don't be absurd. My goal is to save the communicators imprisoned in Labo. I could never accept help from people who hate communicators like... No, it is not communicators that we hate. Huh? What was that? We are indeed not fond of communicators, but what we hate above all else is the Rokame City government. Why them? Q was once not a terrorist organization. We were a simple citizen group with good intentions. We pleaded our case to the world. It is only the natural right to not want others reading your mind. But that didn't go by so well. We caught the eye of the Rokame City government, who then had us framed as a terrorist organization. The man then told Ukita about the trigger that turned Q into a terrorist group. About how a communicator called A caused the great Rokame City arson 14 years ago on September 16th, 2014. About how, in spite of that, the Rokame City government had covered up the facts and blamed the entire incident on Q. About how A had been confined in Labo after that, and then passed away a year later. Hearing that story finally gave Ukita the information he needed to connect all the dots together. I see. So that's why Labo has been confining communicators with immense power, like A's, under the facility. Labo's research probably benefited tremendously from taking communicators as powerful as A and using them as test subjects. That was how they'd been able to produce so many results up until that point. So what you're saying is that the true culprits of the great Rokame City arson are Communicator A and the 15 men and women she infected with her malice, correct? Yes, and those 15 people had nothing to do with us. They were just normal citizens in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Rokame City government covered up the truth behind the incident. However, that simply turned the whole thing into an incoherent mess. No one would ever believe an absurd story that 15 unrelated men and women just happened to all commit arson on the same night. So to fill in the inconsistencies, the Rokame City government decided to use our group as a scapegoat. We were branded as extremists who hated communicators so much that we set fire to the city, thereby lumping us in with the 15 true culprits of the great arson and receiving the same blame they did. We were then sentenced to jail. By the time we were released, our group was no more. The former members had all dispersed. We pleaded our innocence afterwards, but none believed us. It seemed as if our voices would fade away for good, but we didn't give up. We gathered up our scattered members a few years later and rebuilt the organization into its current form. We felt that if Rokame City called us a terrorist organization, then we should turn that lie into the truth. We will do whatever is necessary to achieve that, even if it means taking up arms. Why are you doing all this? To prove your innocence? That's not all. Far from it. We have chosen this path to protect society. To protect society? The thing we've all taken home from the great Rokame City arson is that BC is an extremely dangerous power. A power that is very high risk in human hands by its very nature. Ukita gasped. In what was perhaps the epitome of irony, those words mirrored the ones he once heard from the woman he had respected. Is that a coincidence, or is she part of Q secretly? We'll see. You understand as well that BC is something that the world would have been far safer being ignorant of, don't you? Yes. But they keep its true self hidden away from public knowledge and only emphasize the good parts of it. Even if problems do arise, they'll either deal with it behind closed doors, cover it up, or announce it to the public in a false, sugar-coated form. That is what we truly cannot forgive. A small percentage of people influence society's trends, make a mockery of the sanctity of individuality, and show no remorse for their deeds. If that is decreed to be the natural order of things, the way that society is structured, then don't we have to object to it, even if it means separating from that structure? Don't we have to pose the unrelenting questions to this insidious world through our own actions? Every word the man spoke hit Ukita to the core. For he had been thinking the exact same things ever since he discovered the existence of the test subject. I'll ask you one more time. What do you want to do? Tell me what it is you feel you must do. Ukita answered that question in a clear voice. I want to save them. I want to save whoever Labo's imprisoned as a test subject, no matter what it takes. I simply cannot allow them to continue that barbaric research. Those words came straight from the bottom of his... Ow, excuse me. The bottom of his heart. The man from Q appeared to have expected that answer. That's right. Meanwhile, we wish to expose Labo and Rokame City's treachery. So how about it? Doesn't it sound like we share a common interest? Yeah, but what are you going to do with the test subjects once you've got them? Like, you won't let them go free. Well, that may be true, but we are your tools. We will prepare everything you'll need. The rest depends on if you have the will to act. That's all. He did have that will. Very well, I'll accept your offer. However, promise me one thing. Swear you won't harm any test subjects that get rescued. You have my word. Our goal is to return to a world where we can advocate our natural rights. And thus Ukita decided to join Q. That wasn't very reassuring. He then spent his days after that secretly working in Labo to gain the information he'd need for the plan. He'd occasionally hack a senior fellow's computer and not get caught. It was a very risky move, but he always took the utmost of caution, and in time he gathered more and more information. According to this document, there's definitely more than one test subject. They're children named Subject N, Subject Y, and Subject Y2. Who is Y2? If one of them was born in Labo, that means they must have abducted the other ones. But it says here that one of them has already been discarded, so that means they died? They'll pay for this. I swear I'll save the other 2 test subjects. Labo's infosec is indeed very shit, yeah. Case N. It appears that this is the code used to prevent a test subject from escaping. Its specifications were revised to be stricter after 2021, huh? How are we going to get past this? This is it. If we can exploit this hole in the disaster prevention system. But it's not something I can do alone. As he quickly gathered more and more information, the structure of the plan began to form in Ukita's mind. After about a year or so had passed, he reported his life-endangering plan to Q. In summary, the plan is to cause a man-made accident inside of Labo and seize that opportunity to save the test subjects. Incredible! It sounds like it'll be enough to overcome Labo's strict security. But I do not believe I can accomplish this all by myself. It's essential that we get help from a firefighter or someone. Understood. Then leave the recruitment of our new comrade to us. No, all you have to do is pick out people who look like plausible candidates. I'd like to select my own collaborators. Does that mean you still don't fully trust us? Of course not. Isn't that only natural? I don't even know your face and name. Fair point. Very well. Then start your investigation into the matter right away. I don't think I have to remind you, but be careful about your calls being tapped when you're recruiting our potential comrade. I'll prepare another digital transceiver for you. Use it. Ukita did exactly what he said on that front. Then, one evening, a week later, Ukita got home from work to find a PDA in his mailbox. It had to be the digital transceiver meant for the call. He checked the data folder to find a file labeled Comrade Candidates. Captain Watase Kasasagi of the Special Elite Rescue Squad Sirius, huh? The file contained information beginning with basics like his address and phone number to extensive details such as his personal history. Surprisingly enough, it even contained key points to be used in persuading him. Okay, so the first floral scent is going to be Subject N editing Ukita's memories of the first meeting with Watase to make Watase seem more malicious, I'll bet. Ow. But how did they obtain all this information? Juro Sonozaki? Just who in the world is that man who calls himself part of Q? Well, apparently Juro Sonozaki. Judging from his attitude, he most likely was telling the truth about being a member. But Ukita had grown uneasy about how the man always seemed to know exactly what he was thinking. I feel I can rely on him now, but I don't think he's someone I'd ever open my heart to. That was exactly why Ukita had wanted to pick the person he'd truly call his comrade on his own. Ukita took a deep breath, then took the PDA and dialed Watase's number. Mr. Watase Kasasagi, I presume. Who is this? I'm not one to give away my name. The truth is, there is something I'd like to tell you. Ukita then began talking in a quiet voice, following the information Q had prepared for him. The words he'd need to recruit his comrade. Excuse me. Okay, I need to take a quick break. Where is it? Okay, I need to take a quick break. Be right back in a minute after I rest my throat. Okay, Shy, I'm good to keep trying, but if my throat and lungs get worse, how would you feel about doing another stream on one of the days I currently have scheduled Persona 3 Reload, which is the 25th, 27th, and 28th? Because, ouch! I owe you a bunch of time, so I want to knock a little bit of that off. So we'll pick one of the days I currently have scheduled for Persona 3 Reload later in the month. And we'll do another Root Double stream. Don't know why I'm coughing like this today. Maybe there's something in the air? Not sure. Go for the 25th. Okay, cool. In that case, let's just do that. And I'll just stop talking for the rest of the day. Because, ouch. Yeah. All right. So, sorry for the short stream, guys. That's going to be it for today. Let me... excuse me. Let me read the schedule off. Tomorrow, I will be playing Potionomics for a patron. Thursday will be Chained Echoes for a patron. Friday will be Tactical Breach Wizards for a patron. Saturday will be Final Fantasy XIV. Sunday will be The Devil in Me for a patron. Next Monday will be Deus Ex for a patron. And next Tuesday, I'll be continuing Root Double Before Crime After Days. So that's what's coming up. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. And I will see you next time.